Hello everyone! This video is about, I think, one of the most famous Viking, Ragnar Lothbrok, and his deeds. Stay tuned! First of all, many thanks to my patrons, Joshua Maxwell and Holy Father. Thank you so much, guys. And I found very little pictures regarding the theme, most of them were made centuries after Ragnar's death, so I figured my own animation would be as credible as they are. So, let's start. Although Ragnar Hairy S, or to use more euphonious nickname Leatherpants, was very famous, there is not much reliable historical information about him. Information about his feats is contained in Scandinavian sagas, Icelandic and Swedish Danish. Now they are also described in the Frankish chronicles of the time of Charles the Bold. Ragnar was born in Norway, but was closely associated with the court of Danish King Gorik. The brave warrior and sailor sailed from the Orkney Islands to the White Sea, and military raids became his way of life. West is beyond the sea was Ragnar's motto. According to the legend, 3 daughters weaved a magic banner with the image of a raven for their father. Before the campaign, the banner was uncovered, and if the raven flapped its wings on it, then the Vikings were in for good luck. If the raven hung lifelessly in the fold of the banner, which was obviously in cold weather, Ragnar postponed the campaign until better times. The most successful of his campaign was the daring raid against Paris in 835. In March, Ragnar's ship entered the mouth of Seine and headed to the capital of the Franks. King Charles II the Bold, warned by the sentinels about the appearance of the enemy, divided the army in 2 parts, placing them on both sides of the river. But the Vikings suddenly attacked the part of the army that seemed weaker to them, and the second remained on the opposite bank of the river, helplessly watching the battle. The Vikings defeated the Franks, and to intimidate the remaining ones, Ragnar ordered to hang 111 captured prisoners on the island in the middle of the Seine. Such act of intimidation was a success. The frightened Franks refused to go to battle, and Charles the Bold had no choice but to buy off the enemy. They met at the monastery of Saint Denis, where the king gave Ragnar 7,000 francs. In return, the Viking promised never to invade his domain again, swearing this to the Odin and upon his sword. However, he immediately forgot about his oath. On the way back, he robbed the banks of the lower Seine and the monastery of Saint Bergen in Saint-Omer. At the court of Danish king Ragnar Lothbrok was met as a hero. The old robber enthusiastically told about his feats, exaggerating them a bit though, claiming that he had conquered the whole country from sea to sea. As proof, he demonstrated the locks from the gates of Paris and a piece of copper roof of Saint-Germain-des-Prés church. A few months after this triumph, the exact date is unknown, Ragnar Lothbrok made a predatory raid on the lands of the English kingdom of Northumbria, where he was such a less fortunate. Ragnar's soldiers were killed, and he himself, all wounded, was captured. King Ella condemned him to a terrible death, ordered to throw him in a pit with venomous snakes. Then among the snakes, Ragnar, according to legend, uttered the famous phrase, "How would my piglets grunt now, if they knew what their old boar had to feel like?" The skalds tell how his son took the news of his death. Beyond Ironside grasped the shaft of a spear so tight that left dents on it from his fingers. Hvitserk, who was playing the chess at the moment, squeezed the figure of a knight with such force that blood splattered him from under his nails. Sigurd Snake in the Eye, who was cutting his fingernails with a knife, did not notice how he cut a piece of meat from his finger to the very bones, and the face of Ivar the Boneless changed the colors from pale, red and blue, and at the end of the story turned black like of a dead man and was very swollen with anger. Ragnar's son's terrible revenge was not long to come. Legend said Ragnar's sons attacked England, but Ivar does not want to fight as the English army was too large. He fears that they will lose and will have to go home again. Ivar, however, stays in England and asks Ella for Wergild, claiming that he cannot go home without some compensation to show to his brothers. Ivar only asks for as much land as he can cover with an ox hide. He cuts it into such a fine long string of hide that he can encircle an area so large that he is able to capture the already existing fortress of York, which was the capital of Northumbria. When this was done, he allied himself with all England, and finally all the chieftains in the region became loyal to Ivar and his brothers. The other story sounds more realistic. Brothers gathered a strong army. They swam across the sea and landed in the eastern England, and captured many who rode to York. King Ella didn't have time to collect a strong army, and the Vikings easily defeated the troops of Northumbria. For Ella himself, they prepared a terrible execution used by Vikings on special occasions and having the name Blood Eagle. Pulling the skin off the victim's back, the Avengers ripped out the ribs from the spine and pulled out the lungs, spreading them out into the wings of the disfigured corpse. Thus Ragnar Lothbrok was avenged. Well, that's it for today. Like it if you do, subscribe if you don't want to miss more. Please consider to become my patron as well. That would greatly help me and make video production a bit more faster. Or you maybe want to buy some books. Thank you very much. Bye bye.